Hello and welcome to Hello Yellow. This is a program where we talk about adversity, we talk about life, we talk about love, we talk about inspirational characters, and today we are in no better company than this beautiful human, Chris Healy, co-founder of Happyful. Welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Viv. Happy to be here.
So Happyful, often we talk about being happy and full, but never really together.
True, very true, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Happyful and what it means to you and what the intention of Happyful is.
We've actually just pegged the strategy behind creating the brand. It's meaningful happiness. Meaningful, happy, full, meaningful happiness. So that's exactly what the app and the framework we created was designed to give people a understanding of how to find meaningful happiness.
And so those people who are, I guess, aware of self-growth will be really keen to learn more about it. But what about those people that think, oh, that sounds a bit woo-woo for me, I'm not really interested in that? I mean, why should people come and have a look at what you're doing within the landscape?
I guess it's a very personal journey, one's journey to find meaning and purpose, and that's literally what Happyful, the outcomes of Happyful are meaning, purpose, balance and direction. And so when I was going through, call it bouts of my life, through periods of depression, anxiety, burnout, I've had a few of those because you need to learn from suffering. So you only learn and grow from when you throw yourself outside of your comfort zone into, I guess, scary and unsafe situations egoically, but your heart's kind of yearning for it. And so what we sort of worked out is a lot of people that use their head, and the head and ego is designed to keep us, help us survive and keep us safe. The heart is designed to help us thrive, and it's somewhat unsafe. So Happyful, I guess, is a platform that helps break down that information process and connect people more to their hearts. So understand their core three values, work out who they are, who they want to be more of, what they'd like the world to be, and then looking at their life and looking at how they can create more balance, purpose and meaning, and align their values of who they are to areas of their life. And that in turn, we'll touch on this a bit later, but works out, that's the manifestation process. That's the biggest secret I feel that's been kept from humanity and us as people, is that we are in charge of governing our own realities if we come from the heart.
It sounds like the answer to life.
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, there's many answers to life, but I mean, Viktor Frankl's a great one, right? So Viktor Frankl talks, the meaning of life, the biggest question is, what is the meaning of life, or what is life? And he says, having a vocation, purpose and meaning with the world, loving a significant other, and learning from suffering. And I don't know if you've read his book, Man's Search for Meaning, but it was one of the most profound books I've ever read. So anyone out there wants to read a book on the self-discovery to life, I guess, and learning how to listen to your heart and grow, Man's Search for Meaning.
And how do you listen to your heart?
The heart speaks to you softly and quietly and calmly. The ego is the one that ruminates. You're not this, you're not that, do this, do that, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. The heart's not polarity, it's not black or white. It's grey and it's supportive. And so when you learn to go within, because all the answers we have are within us, despite what you might read books, and that's great to, build your knowledge base, but all the answers, when you really break it down, are inside each and every one of us.
But how do you teach people to listen to themselves? Because most people go, I'll call you, or I'll call someone else, or I'll call, anyone, and think, they've got the answers, I don't have the. How do people sit still and listen to themselves?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because, it is like a muscle. You've got to flex it. So you can't just go, boom, it's turned on, I'm listening to my heart. It starts with, I think, a process of trauma alchemisation. So thanking all your negative experiences in your life because they've made you the strong, capable, wise, experienced person you are today.
So I'm going to stop you there. Trauma alchemisation.
Correct.
Okay, let's slow this whole thing down, because you've just said something that is incredibly powerful.
Sure.
So talk us through your process of trauma alchemisation, because people are talking about having gone through trauma, and everyone's got a trauma. It's like a throwaway line, you know, anxiety, depression. But let's talk about the power of what you've just said.
I really believe, and this is not my theory, I'm picking bits of information and feathers from different amazing spiritual, I guess, birds or gurus. But it really is either fear or love. So when you have a neural pathway that fires into your energy field, quite often we're taught that we're not enough, we're not capable, we already cut ourselves off at the knees before we start, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on people to keep them suppressed and not following their hearts and following the status quo, the system. Go to work, come home, sleep, rest, drink, weekend, repeat, rinse, repeat, versus stopping, pausing and going, right, so what am I feeling? Or how am I feeling? Versus I've got to keep myself busy and going and moving on to one thing to the next, distracted from doing the work. So the work I'm kind of going off track, but trauma alchemisation is thanking all the negative experiences in your life. So the guilt, grief and shame are met with forgiveness, gratitude and love. And so you look at all your negative experiences, which you're taught are negative, but there is always an advantage to a disadvantage. And one of the favourite quotes that I probably have is, when shit hits the fan, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. You just don't know the reason yet. And sometimes that reason is a lot further out than what we actually anticipate.
So we often have people on this program where we talk about adversity and that it is a necessary part of people finding their truth, but also propelling them into a direction where they wouldn't have ordinarily not gone to. So tell me more about, your thoughts on that, and then how do we get people to understand it's so important to sit comfortably in the uncomfortable space, because when it's happening to us, it's, toys are being thrown out of the cot. Why is this happening to me? How do we teach people that this is a normal part of being? This is a normal, not only is it normal, but it's a necessary part of our being. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, there's multiple, everyone obviously obtains and retains and absorbs information differently and truths differently. So what works for one may not work for the other. But from my personal experience, I guess, what worked for me was writing down all the negative things that had happened in my life and, to be honest, crying them out. The body never ever releases any emotion. It's cellularly, that a word? Stored.
Good. I like that.
Cellularly?
Yeah.
Comfortability should be a word too. It's not even in the dictionary.
Yeah. Is it not?
No, it should be. It's stored in the body because until the awareness is put onto it and therefore dug up and then released. And so for me, I stayed up one night probably about 4 years ago when it first hit, locked in our houses. I mean, that was, for me personally, a very brilliant part of, yes, it had its negatives, but the advantages for that were it taught everyone to sort of stop and go within and actually listen and go, am I doing what I want to do? Am I just following societal pressure? Am I following parental pressure? Am I following peer pressure? Or am I actually honouring who I am, my authenticity? Because authenticity is probably one of the highest vibrations one can emit. So if you're being authentic to self, life will just happen for you, but it's very tough to do that. So going back to the trauma, I guess people taking the plunge, it's actually stopping and going within and looking at self and looking at all the negative experiences and not hating them, not running from them, not ignoring them, but bringing them up, allowing them to bubble up, looking at them and thanking them and then letting them go. And from that, you then actually stop the ego from keeping you safe and you open up your heart to help you start to thrive. And that would probably help slightly with me learning to listen to the heart more, because it speaks a bit louder once the noise and the gunk is alchemised a bit.
Is ego bad?
No, absolutely not. It's necessary. However, it can be dominant, and I think there needs to be an equal balance between head, heart and ego. Sorry, ego is head and and heart. So I think it needs to be, I think there could be a recorrection more towards heart centricity, or being heart centric versus egocentric, because everything that we do, particularly men, taught to be the biggest, the best, the toughest, the strongest. In high school, you win, you're a champion, you lose, you're not. You get the girl, you're a hero. If you're not, you're a dunce. So there's all this pressure of men to try and win, and that's egoic. They're not taught to sit in their emotions and feel, or heal, or be vulnerable. And vulnerability has been known as an absolute superpower.
Do you think that's changing though with men?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of wonderful movements out there, a lot of wonderful groups, a lot of wonderful awareness on the importance for men to get in touch with their emotions and their hearts and realise that vulnerability is courage. Not being vulnerable is not being courageous. Jumping off a building, sure, that's a definition of courage, but...
Is it, if you die?
Well, if you don't die, but jumping out of a plane with a parachute, whatever you want, whatever analogy we want.
Yeah.
But it's men are taught that that's courage. Fighting a lion in a jungle, courage. That's kind of stupidity, right? But honouring your heart and listening to it and admitting that you're flawed, admitting that you're hurt, admitting that you're scared, admitting that you're afraid at times, brings people on the journey with you, and then opening up their hearts, and then you build this support network versus, I've got to beat that person, I've got to win this, I've got to win that.
But isn't that just human nature?
No, that's the biggest misconception about human nature. It's not. We are heart-centred beings. Fear, grief, and shame are learnt emotions. They're not natural. They're learnt from your environment. Love, forgiveness, gratitude are innate in humanity.
And, you know, that's absolutely true. If you think about when a baby's born, it is surrounded by nothing but pure, unwavering love and adoration.
Spot on. And the colours and the sounds and everything's new, and they're not indoctrinated. There's no fear. There's no I need to fit in. I need to be accepted. I can just be.
So how do we then start, you know, harnessing exactly what you're saying? And I think, you know, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Back to the trauma alchemisation. I mean, to have the courage to workshop through that, I think that by itself is incredibly powerful. So I want you to revisit how we do that, because that is so vitally important. And then secondly, you know, how do we then encourage this non-fear-based behaviour in order to be the best versions of ourselves?
Two very good questions. Okay, so I'll start with one of the greatest things I learned. I created a natural hangover relief formula about probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it took me a long time to build the formula, to bring it to market. And what you have to do, you have to believe so much in a product to get it there on the shelf. It's egoic. You have to drive it with your ego. And obviously your heart as well, but you have to believe. And when it doesn't go the way you want it to go, it's shattering. But unless you believe wholeheartedly you're going to get it there, you weren't going to get it there. So you have to. But then when it doesn't, that's the ego death, and it's a really tough process.
So this business was Rejuve,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken. So you believed wholeheartedly, you did all of your research, and then what happened?
Well, I'll get to the reason I brought that up is I used to, when it didn't work out for numerous reasons, won't go into the detail, but long story short, it had a short shelf life. It was tough to market because it was a TGA-approved product, so you couldn't actually talk about. You had to advertise it in a catalogue of a pharmacy. You couldn't sell it, you know, to 7-Eleven on a counter, or you know, brand it up in billboards, which I did for a little bit. But yeah, so it was. The whole point, what I realised was, so the trauma of getting over that and the alchemisation of Rejuve not working came to a point where I was like, all right, I blame the TGA, I blame the government, I blame my investor, I blame blame. Blame, as I learnt later on, and one of the critical things to get over trauma and dig it up and alchemise it is blame is a circular argument that begins at the very centre, you. So had I known what I know now back then, I would have got a paid a wage. I would have known not to do a shelf life of 2 years. I would have made the formula stronger. So I would have changed that situation had I known what I know now. So to get over the trauma of that, I have to own it. Mm-hmm. and then alchemize it, and that's how you do it. You forgive yourself because you didn't know what you know now.
And that's the key, isn't it?
That's it. That's the key.
So you get off this whole gravy train of
Poor me.
being a victim.
Yep.
Stop looking outward. Accept all of the things that you didn't do.
Correct.
And then let go.
That's it. And then learn and grow. That's it.
Yeah.
Sounds really easy, but it's very, very tough because when the world's telling you one thing and your heart's telling you something different and you're trying to sort of delineate what do I listen to, it's tough. But I guess it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the more you strengthen it.
Yeah. So Rejuve didn't work.
Yep.
Would you call it a failure or how would you now look at that?
How do you define success?
I define success by learning from your mistakes.
Then it was a huge success. If you define success as monetary gain, not so much.
So you've obviously done a lot of inward work, self-discovery. You're very open-hearted. And now you've created this app called Happyful, which has been in the works for a very, very long time. What is it? What is it about? How can it help other people? And what about those people that are sitting there going, oh, that is not for me. You know, that sounds just way too much. Like it's too much. How do you start breaking down those barriers and going, hey, listen, let's be real. And the language that we're using is heart centres, letting go of trauma, which is a lot for, your typical Aussie male.
Massively, yeah.
So how do we break those barriers down? And then maybe it's not Happyful, but something like that allows people to understand what their superpowers actually are, and that is the absolute opposite to the way in which we've all been brought up.
So, I guess it's a very, very, very big question. Starting at the top, there's a lot of mental wellness products out there and they're wonderful and they're doing a wonderful job. What there's lacking is heart-centric products. And Happyful is, I guess, a pioneer in that landscape.
Certainly is, yeah.
And so by going back within self, understanding who you are with your 3 core values. So Happyful step 1 is your workout. You answer a series of 8 questions, and it gives you 3 values. So who you are, who you'd like to be more of, and what you would like the world to have more of in it. You then get those 3 core values and you do, and this is probably born out of a lot of this is born out of myself and Matt, my best mate, soul brother, business partner in Happyful, our experiences. So it's not from textbooks or whatever else, it's from real world experience. So school of hard knocks, I guess. Mm-hmm. And when Rejuve crashed, the second stage of Happyful is a life wheel. And the life wheels are not new and innovative. They've been done to death.
All life coaches,
Correct.
will be able to sort of, a life wheel is, you segment.
Correct.
Financial, physical,
That's
health.
Right. Our life
family,
wheel is connected to the chakras. Uh-huh. So we've all got an energy system in our body connected to the chakras. And so, because we are all energy by nature. And so when you're going and talking heart centricity, we're talking energy. We're not talking things, material. It's energetic. And so the 8 segments, when Rejuve crashed, I went into severe depression and burnout, ego death, self-medication of whatever was around at the time. We all have those at times. There's no judgment on whatever anyone does, because sometimes you just need a crutch to get you through a period. I saw an intuitive life coach. He said, now, Chris, where do you spend your effort and energy? And I looked at the wheel, and Sahel, shout out to him if he's watching. But I remember it was like 10 out of 10 work career was where I spent my effort and energy. And then friends, family, love, nature, spirituality, knowledge, wisdom was all ones and twos. And he's looking, and it wasn't until I did that exercise, because I was working full time in advertising and media and on Rejuve, so I was burning the candle a lot.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was saying, and pardon my French, I go, oh my God, I am shattered. Like I'm saying, it wasn't until I saw how much effort I was spending in one little segment, and it was at the expense of all the others. And then he said to me, he goes, you realise you can fill up that entire wheel? And I went, wow, okay, all right, let's. And so that's step 2 of Happyful. And then you align your values to your area of the wheel, and by aligning your heart-centered values to your life wheel, you then set little mini goals in each area of the wheel. And what that does is, because you're coming from a heart-centered basis, and when you're coming from a heart-centered basis, that's the key to learning how to co-create or manifest your reality. So when we were testing Happyful, I'm a bit of a complexity theorist, Reju was a pretty intense formula and I liked all the complexities. I'm like, Happyful's a bit more, I don't know, like it's simple in its approach, but we tested it. And I reckon out of 500 people, 80% wrote down and you partook in this as well, you write down your goals in your area of life and you check back at the end of the week and you're like, hang on a minute, I don't remember setting that goal, but one of mine was I'm going to see my nieces more often. And I somehow drove off the freeway, I'm going to call in and see my brother, and I was like, everyone's ticking off their goals without actually ticking them off mentally in their head. It just happens organically in their reality, in their nature. Yeah. And that's because they're coming from a heart-centered basis, honouring their values in their life wheel. And that's, I guess, basically the Happyful secret.
So it's a form of manifestation. What would you say to the naysayers that go, you know what, I've set intentions, I manifest, doesn't happen? What would you say to that?
Are they coming from their heart or their head? Are they getting something that they want or something that they need?
And how do you know the difference sometimes?
You don't. That's a lie. You do, but you also don't. Sometimes you might not get what you want at the velocity or speed that you want it. And that's when it's the delay between manifestation, which can sometimes be frustrating, but we've got no time on that. We can't dictate that. And
I think that's the key. I think sometimes people walk away from the beauty of your message and your communication because it's not happened on their time scale.
Spot on.
And it's not happened the way they wanted.
Spot on.
So,
but that's egoic.
Right, yeah.
Because the ego wants.
Yeah.
The heart just is.
Yeah. So, Chris, you've been obviously through quite a little bit. We've talked a bit about Rejuve, your various, business propositions and ventures and heart versus, the ego. What do you think's been the most profound learning that has helped shape who you are today?
I'd have to say the ability to look at whenever life throws a curveball at you, it's copying it and not going, poor me, why me? It's like, well, hang on, what's the lesson to learn here? Is this for me, or can I just let this sort of one slide? If it is for you, then you sort of take it in and don't run from it, absorb it, and then have a look at maybe what it's teaching you or what message it might have. And that could be an experience, a breakup, or whatever negative experience. So rather than victimising, going, why? Me? Maybe go, how do I get through it versus why? Let's create a process to start moving through it.
Yeah, but how do you do that? Like, in all honesty, we've all been, a job's been lost, or, you've got to break up with a partner, or, heaven forbid, something more, dire, deaths in families of loved ones. How do you, in those moments, actually sit and go, well, this is happening for me, not happening to me? So, what advice do you give? Because we've all been through that.
Yeah. First of all, it's to cut out the noise and the why, because it is, I guess. It's very hard in the moment. So you've got to allow yourself some time and space to feel and grieve. So, one of the mantras, I guess, I've been taught across the course of time is I allow it to flow, I allow it to flow through, then I allow it to go, I let it go, it goes. So it's a matter of letting it come in, filter in, but then you've got to release it and let it go. So you can't just go, nah, that's not for me, I'm bulletproof, I'm not copying that. It's feel it, but then let it go eventually. And you don't do that unless you actually, because we all have the power to do that. You just have to have the conscious awareness to ask for it and allow it.
And I think sometimes the challenge is if you can't think that you know it all, and you cannot just gloss over things. You have to actually let it flow through you.
Correct.
So that you can learn the lessons and it doesn't come back up again.
That's right.
In years or decades later to surprise you.
That's right. And we all know the wheel. We all know the trauma wheel. The lesson will keep repeating until you learn it. So the universe will keep throwing it at you in your face in certain situations until you're growing from it and shifting, adjusting and pivoting. Because if you're still staying in it and repeating the same mistake, you're not growing.
what advice would you give to somebody that's watching or listening to this program and says, look, that all sounds really great. I'm definitely going to log on to the Happyful thing. But, you know, end of the day, life's life. I've sort of given up. What would you say to these people?
Persistence beats resistance. You just got to keep going. Pick yourself up. One of my greatest, I guess, I'd say strengths is the ability to pick. It's not how you get knocked down, it's how you get back up. We all know that saying. But it's also about dare, have a go. You know, like you don't know unless you have a go. And so one of my favourite quotes is, because I read your notes that you sent me about the questions.
Yeah.
I've got to drop this one in, this is a good one.
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
Now's the time.
Okay, are we all ready? Coming to?
Go.
To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. To not dare is to lose oneself.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and that's when I read the Soren Kierkegaard. That's the creator of the quote, and I just went, "Phew, I love that."
A mic drop right there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's been so wonderful to have you on the program today, Chris. I don't think I could actually follow up with any other question with that final, the words of wisdom, but unless you have something else, I mean, I could sit here and listen to you all afternoon. But if people want to find out a little bit more about Happyful and maybe your journey, where can they head to?
Well, definitely, we've got a website. We're sort of revamping the content at the moment, but the app's in the app stores, iOS and Android. Type in Happyful, HAPPYFU1L.
It'll be appearing on the screen for those people watching. Yep.
Down here.
But for those people listening, thank you so much for the explanation, and thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks very much, Viv. And again, lovely to answer your questions, and I hope I've enlightened a couple of people who are watching or listening.
You'll be definitely on again next time.
Excellent.
Thank you all.